Can you hear me here? I've just logged on to another laptop.
Yes, but we hear you like 1 million times.
Yep. You're like in a very high mountain with lots of echoes, feeling the universe.
Last try. Any better?
Yes, perfect now.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay. Okay, so we are 17. Maybe we can start if you agree. See, so good morning. Welcome to the webinar Designing and Implementing Citizen Engagement Actions. I hope you are as excited as we are about these pilot actions. I'm sure for that. Today we have very interesting presentations. We have two speakers, Liz Morris-Webb, that is here, by the Nordland Institute of Research. And before we leave, we can listen to Anna Gallagher, who will present the C-Synergy project, which was also selected for its great potential. Sorry if I didn't pronounce your names correctly. So please, Liz, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for having me. I'm just going to pull up my presentation and see if it's in the right mode now. Let's see how it goes. Which can you see?
We can see also the comments.
Is that better?
Much better.
Yeah. Okay, super. I'm just going to make it so that I can see better. There you go. Okay. So thank you for the introduction and for coming to this presentation. Congratulations to all of you on your winning bids. I enjoyed hearing about them yesterday, and I am looking forward to hearing about Anna's as well today. So my name is Liz Morris-Webb. I'm a doctor. I'm a marine biologist with 20 years of experience as a scientific diver. I also have 11 years experience as a citizen science coordinator for CSIC in Wales or in UK. But I retrained in social sciences, and I'm now working at the Nordland Research Institute on two Horizon projects. One's PREP4BLUE, and one is a project called Empower Us. Primarily, my role is in ocean literacy, which is why I was invited, I think, to come along and join at this point, because your projects are all about ocean literacy, essentially. So today I'll present the PREP4BLUE Toolbox about implementing citizen science projects specifically. Before I start, though, I'd like to outline that this is, or underline that this work that I'm presenting today was not actually me mostly. It was a lot of people, and it was led by the NRI and my boss, Maiken Bjorken, who sadly can't be with us today. And their names are listed at the end if you have any questions. But of course, you can reach out to me at any point as well. So my cursor's disappeared from the screen, so I can see how that goes. So I'm just going to recap a little bit on yesterday. Traditionally, we look to science for solutions, and that's how it was really before the Ocean Decade, largely with our kind of work area. Mission Ocean aims to include regular people in solving the complex problems and challenges that face us in the world today, specifically around the ocean, climate and pollution, amongst other things. And yesterday, David presented the mission objectives and the specific citizen engagement targets that he'll be presenting next week on, like the how you might evaluate and map your projects onto these citizen engagement targets. The mission raises two questions to us as social scientists, which is how can we include citizens and relevant knowledge in solving the problems that we face today? So in what I'm going to present today, we suggest a rough diagnostic tool for citizen engagement, which is based on something called post-normal science. I'm not really going to, in this webinar, talk about post-normal science. That's very much Maiken's thing. But she did do a webinar already, which is available on the PREP4BLUE website. It's webinar 1. If anyone wants to look it up, I recommend it. It's really good grounding on what's going to be presented today. And it gives some more examples in real life of how this has been applied in fisheries and other contexts. So this webinar aims to present the tool to aid in your planning of your citizen engagement projects. And as I said, David White will follow next week with evaluating and monitoring those projects. So this is what the toolbox looks like. It's available on the website. You can find it from searching the Engaging Citizens Toolbox or Citizen Engagement Toolkit. And it has 8 sections with sort of 4 main juicy ones, if you like, about the theory and the terminology used in citizen engagement. It presents a typology of citizen participation, which I'll present today. It has a section on engaging citizens in a sort of step-by-step guide, including preparing for citizen engagement, implementing and choosing your tools, which you've largely already done in your projects, in your bidding phase, and then monitoring and assessing them. And it gives different examples of how these engagement tools might have been used in the past. And it provides some examples and advice on aligning to mission ocean, which is what David will talk about more next week. So that's the toolbox and where to find it. So please do look it up. Oh, hello. We've opened it here. I don't know if you can see that, but I'll try and close it somehow. My cursor keeps disappearing, which is totally lost my
We are
cursor.
still on the citizen engagement toolkit slide.
Are you? Good. I'm pleased. I'm not, and my cursor's not appearing on my slide. Sorry, technical problems.
Maybe if you stop sharing and share back again.
Split screen is not working. I know. Sorry about this.
Don't worry, let's take your time.
I've got it. I fixed it. I had to rearrange my screens again. Sorry about that. So, section 3 of the toolkit does present some levels or ladders of participation, which I'll let you read through. But basically, there's different types of participation and different reasons to involve people in making solutions to the challenges that we face, or mission ocean. And I've had a look at your projects with Maiken, and in today's presentation, we're going to help you try and apply this diagnostic tool and with appropriate guiding questions to help you plan your ambitions of your projects, ensure that you plan for sort of uncertainty and risk in your project, and that you manage the expectations for your participants, but also for yourselves and for your funders and anybody involved. So citizen participation means that individuals from different backgrounds can get involved in decision-making, generating knowledge, and citizen engagement and participation can take different forms from providing opinions or directly influencing research processes and outcomes. And I see some of your projects are working with scientists and actually coming up with your tools together, whilst others are much more informing citizens from your science that's already been done or utilising the results of projects that have already been created. Now, the level of participation can vary, and a ladder like this is often used to illustrate the different levels of engagement and citizen power. So in the matrix here, you can see that it's based on different forms of citizen participation on the top line. So moving from left to right, you have inform, which is sort of the traditional pushing of knowledge, if you like, or informing people about a problem or about a solution, to consulting, where you're obtaining more feedback on analysis, alternatives, and the decisions, and that might be with scientists or relevant knowledge holders in your community. Then there's more active involvement and full collaboration, and then finally in empowerment. On the bottom line, you can see the different options on what you give back or the promise that you're making to the public. And I think it's safe to say these categories can overlap in real life, but it's important to have an idea which mission initiative you're aiming for. And that's what David will be coming to next week with you. So in summary, this matrix sort of illustrates different levels of engagement to think about, granting increasing levels of citizen power and influence in defining the problem and creating a solution. So on the far right, people will be involved with defining the problem and creating the solution, whereas on the inform, you'll be much less, the citizens will have much less power in that solution making. So you'll recognize these sort of stages of collaboration or types of collaboration as we go through, or the engagement as we go through the presentation today. So this is a reminder that this toolkit really was developed to be applied before your bidding stage, if you like. So coming up with your problem and assessing the uncertainty and the risk involved with the project. So post-normal science acknowledges the uncertainties and complexities of societal challenges in Mission Ocean, and it emphasizes a need for more democratic approaches and citizen engagement, which is what David talked about yesterday. Post-normal science emphasizes the importance of including these diverse perspectives, understanding different types of uncertainties and risks, and involving regular people and scientists in those decision-making processes to address the complex challenges effectively and together. So post-normal science says that there's a lot of uncertainty and disagreement about a problem. We need to include the different perspectives and use more democratic models. And uncertainty is a really big part of Mission Ocean and the mission challenges. And some uncertainties can be measured and controlled, while others can't. And the controllable problems that we can control for have little conflicts and fewer risks, whereas those uncontrollable problems are more ambiguous, and not one person will have the answer. So they need to be co-created, and we need to take into account like how the uncontrollable problems affect people's lives, the risks that are involved, and take those into account and their knowledge about it as well. So they require much more input from various stakeholders, including the citizens. I'm not going to talk more about this now, but if you're interested in this, then go back to the report and have a look at that webinar, the first webinar that I talked about at the beginning. So when you bring together this idea of having controllable problems moving towards uncontrollable problems on the right here, the scope of the risk, and the type of input that you need, then you can start thinking, I guess, about the citizen engagement and the types of engagement that you need, who's needed, and the level of participation that you need, and that's sort of shown on this figure here. And I'm not going to go into detail now. I'm going to present this to you now, and then I'm going to come back to it in relation to your projects a little bit later. So this is just presenting really what we're calling the diagnostic tool, which ideally would be applied before you bid for your project. But we're sort of doing it in hindsight now because we have some useful tips maybe moving on. So the toolbox presents a step-by-step guide to the preparation for citizen engagement, and that's today's sort of webinar. Through thorough preparation is really important to ensure your projects, the success of your projects, and to consider the reasons for your citizen participation and how it might actually unfold in the short projects that you've got. We're going to talk about building relationships and communicating with the target community and stakeholders and mapping the participants to ensure that you leave no one behind. After today's presentation, it would be nice if you sort of go away in the next week and think about your project, sense check it on what you've learned today, hopefully. Think, does your map fit the landscape? The picture in the background is a map actually generated as part of one of these processes. Check that your goals and the steps are all in the correct order for what you want to achieve, and check that you are including everybody that you need to and you have the right pathways to that inclusion. And then the last point, which says choose the specific tools and methods based on the problem. You've kind of already picked I appreciate you've already picked your tools and your methods, but it's just now tweaking them and making sure that you can use them most effectively to reach all the people you want to for your mission ocean objectives. And then next week, David will continue on monitoring and evaluation. So what level of participation do your projects want or need? We've had a look at your projects and I've had a go at trying to apply this diagnostic tool to each one of them. However, this is my first attempt. I don't know your project as well as you know your projects. But from what I can read on the limited information I have, some of your projects have clear agendas to inform people, communities, scientists, whoever you're informing. Others are much more complex and aim to empower civil society through involvement of multiple actors or different groups of people, from traditional knowledge holders like scientists to everyday citizens or residents. So section 3 of the toolkit explains that some projects may need to stage their levels of participation, which some of you have done in your bids, and you had like 3, some projects have like 3 clear steps and different types of involvement and participation. And each phase may need to adopt a slightly different type of participation and therefore different tools, which you've already acknowledged often in your bids, but this might be a useful thought process to go through now as well, as you might ask the same questions 3 times if you have 3 steps to make sure that you're keeping track, if you like, or keeping to your agenda, to what you want to do. Although all of your projects are trying to inform people, and maybe many of you consider your projects of a simple risk, several do address much more complex or ambiguous risks requiring like different types of knowledge. And some of you in your bids also talked about empowering communities. But after today's presentation, you may consider, are you really trying to empower, or are you involving and collaborating or consulting and involving with your stakeholders? The definition of true empowerment that I like is the capacity to mobilize resources along 3 dimensions, and that's to ensure access to resources and institutions, strategies to mobilize them, and empowering people with the willingness to do so, to mobilize the resources that they need. And then you'll also want to think about how deep you want to dive into your citizen engagement and whether you are aiming more on the inform end or whether you're aiming at the empowerment end. So these are your projects. I've given you all a little icon. So we have the ECOP Ocean Literacy course. I apologize if I've given you the wrong names. I have tried to pick out the right names, but they might be the wrong names. Your Baltic Sea Hackathon, which there's some people thinking about it there. Your Sea of Sounds, then the Oyster Restoration Project, the Green Energy Project, and then your Giant Puzzle. All of them really exciting and with different levels of ambition, hoping to achieve different things, which is great. Nice, diverse set of projects. So the big question mark there is at the inform end. There was only one project that clearly sort of sat in the inform end, which was the Ocean Literacy course. They already have a lot of the knowledge and it's about creating the resources and informing people. However, even that project, where it sits, is a little bit tricky because it's quite a simple risk. You're not doing anything particularly ambiguous with the project, but you are considering the community's needs, but through that tool, you actually will be giving people the resources and access to institutions, the willingness to mobilize, the ocean literacy and the blue citizenship scope. So I would argue maybe it's actually not an informed project, and maybe you're actually looking more towards the other end of the scale. Again, we have the Baltic Sea Hackathon, which is clearly involving people and consulting in its development, but also informing as part of the process, of the co-creation process. The Sea of Sounds is involving scientists and stakeholders to try and create a meaningful emotion around and understanding of the ocean, I guess. And then the Oyster Restoration Project, you have like two clear sort of stages of participation, I think, levels of participation in your project. One is with stakeholders, the divers, and then the other is with the wider community, empowering them. And then similarly, the energy project is the same sort of ambitions, if you like, or similar ends. However, the puzzle, which was the one noted as sort of one of the art and art projects, a more arts-based project, working with science. Now you have 3 steps in yours and 3 different potential levels of participation to just think about to make your project as successful as it can be. And you may like to tweak those if that's within the scope of the funding. So this is just how I've thought about it, but I'd like you to go away this week and think about it. And I've also got some guiding questions now that I'm going to present, which might help you. So once you've thought through your project using the diagnostic tool, we suggest each project plans for the uncertainty and risk by using these guiding questions from the toolkit to help you reflect on the ambition of your project, what each step is actually hoping to achieve, who it needs to achieve it with, and how you're going to get there, and to ensure that you manage the expectations among your participants on what that step, what their involvement is actually going to achieve, and it's not overly ambitious or promising too much. Because you can see the way I've presented your projects at the top, it looks like following the arrow, you're moving from more controllable problems to more uncontrollable things as you go down the arrow at the top there. So, excuse me. The toolbox, as I said, does give you a list of guiding questions to help you prepare for your project. And depending what type of project and participation you decide that you'll need from the previous step, you should consider whether you ask these questions for each phase or different participation type of your project. So it's up to you how you go through these and how important you think each one of these are. But I would suggest you just go through them and have a think, oh, is it as simple as I thought it was, or is it actually more complex, this problem? In particular, I would suggest going through in this order, but it's up to you. What do you hope to obtain by including citizens in that phase of your project? What type of input do you need? What kind of knowledge do you need from them to succeed? If they're of high levels of complexity, you may need to further subdivide maybe your ambitions of the project and then the participation you need for each one. Think about who you really need. A lot of your projects do involve multiple groups of people. And what level of participation do you actually need? How much of their time are you asking for? And then place them in the timeline. Based on, like, one step might depend on another step, and you need to make sure they're effective. The first step's effective to be successful. So I'd say that thinking about the relevant actors and what level of participation you want from them is really the most essential step for you right now. And that's particularly important for those of you who yesterday said that you're still looking for collaborators, as you don't have a long project, and you need like clear pathways to who you're collaborating with, and how you're going to get to them, how you're going to engage with them. What are you going to get? What's the carrot for them to get involved with your project? And what's the promise that you're going to make, going back to the first slide, to them for their participation? So I'm going to focus specifically on those sort of three bits, the actors. And the reason is that the biggest limitation for co-creation and citizen engagement is the actual effective involvement of the relevant actors, and enabling people to participate. So PREP4BLUE and Empower Us did a workshop at the Ocean Decade Conference a few months ago, and we had 18 different co-creation practitioners and researchers. Some of you will have been there. And we asked people who came to our session to explain the main challenges and barriers to effective inclusion in their co-creation processes. And we found the barriers to inclusion were not just around people. I think that the easiest thing to do in a project is say, well, yeah, I couldn't involve the schools because the teachers were busy. There was a barrier. But actually, it's often more than just one simple, obvious thing. Or I couldn't get the local immigrant residents involved because it wasn't I didn't facilitate in the right language. That's another simple, obvious explanation. But you can account for these things by making sure you do things when teachers aren't busy, which is difficult on a fixed term project, or ensuring you have budget for translation or facilitation in another language. So yeah, there's obvious risks around the people and barriers to inclusion around the people, but there's also quite a lot of barriers in the process, and other external factors that are totally beyond your project's control. So going back to the language problem, on one of our other projects, 40% of the local population is actually immigrants, and the project hadn't accounted money for translation and second language interpretation or facilitation. And also, we didn't have the correct communication channels for those participants because they were immigrants. They use different communication channels to the resident population. So thinking about, do they use WhatsApp? Do they use Facebook? Do they use something else? I was working with a group of Asian people in the UK, and they used a totally different like social media pathway. So it's thinking who are the people you want? How can you reduce those barriers? There are less obvious examples, like other things going on locally that might be pressing on the participants' time. Obvious things, like I mentioned before, like school holidays or exam times at schools, but less obvious things, like other similar projects asking for people's time. And how can you account for that or make your project juicy so that people still want to come and be involved, even though they're tired and they've done 2 other evenings that week at someone else's project? So really complex projects that have too many steps and lots of other actors involved can actually alienate people as well. So you don't want to alienate people by necessarily explaining all the complicated steps to them. You just want to make sure that they've got the relevant information, but that they feel like they really are important for that step. So these barriers to inclusion can apply to other scientists involved or artists involved with your project, other disciplines in your group, as well as the stakeholders and individual scientists. As we know, like terminology between disciplines is really a tricky thing, so you can easily alienate somebody from a different discipline by simply not using the terms they're familiar with. So at the workshop in Barcelona at the Ocean Decade Conference, we actually asked people what the solutions they suggested were to sort of overcome these barriers, and I've presented a few of these here. I've called them an inclusion strategy, and this does go beyond the current toolkit, PREP4BLUE toolkit. But there are some important things that people can think about here, in bold particularly: managing the expectations of your participants to ensure that they're happy and that they're not disappointed, and that they're willing to work with projects like yours again in future, using independent facilitation if you are co-creating things that maybe you're not the best person always. It's lovely to see artists in, because it's nice to see projects run by artists rather than the scientists sometimes, because you really are effective at breaking down those terminology barriers. But also thinking about making that participation possible for people and breaking those barriers down. So in terms of the inclusion strategy, which isn't in the PREP4BLUE toolkit, it does come back though to the stakeholder mapping, effective stakeholder mapping. So the principles of leaving no one behind are to think carefully for each stakeholder group. Who's left behind or who might be left behind? Why are they being left behind or why might they be left behind? And what can you do to ensure that they're not? And removing barriers, utilizing gatekeepers or finding the right pathways to them is very important. But also managing their expectations, transparency throughout your project, but especially about the legacy, you know, what's happening after, and what will happen to the resources they're helping to produce in your case. So this can be thought of when you're doing a stakeholder mapping exercise. So in Appendix 1 for the toolkit, there's some guiding questions for mapping your stakeholders and making sure that you think carefully about each group. It has citizens and local NGOs lumped here, but obviously you'll tease them out on who specifically you want to involve. But you can think about the what their stake or agenda is, like whether they're a leader, how they're influencing or actively involved with decision making. And then I would suggest for each group to also consider those leaving no one behind principles to make sure that they can actually be involved with your project as you'd like them to be. And then this also links to what David will be talking about next week, but the final reporting. So once you've considered those guiding questions, mapped your stakeholders, considered the principles of leaving no one behind, you should be really well prepared to complete your reporting template. And the reporting template includes some questions that are available in Table 4 of the toolkit, which are you know, what type of participation is your aim, what depth of participation, and how can we pinpoint exactly the type of and level of participation. So how are you going to get there? It's mapping your route pathway to your stakeholders, if you like. I'm going to move a little bit away from the toolkit, partly as a word of a warning, because the toolkit was actually written before some definitions in ocean literacy changed. And all of your projects, although only 2 are actually labelled as ocean literacy projects or categorised as ocean literacy projects, you're all really working hard to help people understand their influence on their ocean and their influence on its influence on them. So I just thought I'd put this in because not all of you are ocean literacy practitioners. I know some of you are and you're well educated in it, so I'm not teaching you to suck eggs. But I am aware that some of you may be less familiar with the ocean literacy sort of work area. So ocean literacy is about increasing society's understanding of the ocean and understanding of its influence on you and your influence on it. So an ocean literate person should understand the essential principles and fundamental concepts about the functioning of the ocean, be able to communicate about it, and then most importantly, being able to make informed and responsible decisions regarding the ocean and its resources. And I really think that all of your projects are trying to do this in one way or another. So I thought it was quite nice to just think about, I think it was Corinne yesterday showed this, the essential principles of ocean science, which is traditionally where ocean literacy sort of grounded, was the idea that we want everybody, scientists want everybody to understand these 7 principles of the ocean. And it used to be thought that ocean literacy was purely like pushing this knowledge, these 7 principles of ocean science to people, and once they understood them, they would transform that into good action for the ocean. And recent work over the last 20 years has actually changed its thinking a bit, and it says, well, actually, these 7 principles are very important, but the way that people utilize that knowledge is affected by actually these 10 other dimensions. And ocean literacy isn't just knowledge and awareness about the ocean. It's actually all about these 7 principles. It's also about people's emotion for the ocean. It's about how people access the ocean, be it virtually or in person. It's about activism, how mobilized they are to actually act and make a difference. So although your projects won't be assessed by ocean literacy dimensions or principles, I do urge you to sort of think, which principles am I working with in my project? Do I want to focus on one or all? And also, which of these dimensions am I thinking about empowering? Just to sort of help you have clarity on what you're trying to achieve and help you think about your pathway to get there. Because it'd be almost impossible to, to be working on all these dimensions and all these principles, but you can sort of give it some thought process on what you really want to achieve by the projects that you're doing. So in summary, we'd really urge you to use the resources available in the toolbox, assess your ladder of participation. What level do you need and who do you need? Prepare for your project and for Mission Ocean by using those guiding questions available in section 4 of the toolbox. Consider the type of ocean literacy you're trying to achieve, what principles you want to convey, and which dimensions you want to work on. Map your participants, make sure that you understand who you're trying to involve and how you're going to get there with a bespoke inclusion strategy. And finally, look ahead at the final report, that template that was sent around. I think it's been sent around. If not, it will be sent around soon, to make sure that you can plan for this template and that you are taking into account all the things that are needed. And then over the next week or two, revise your pilot action plans, your tools accordingly. I'm not suggesting anyone changes your tool. They all sound fantastic and really interesting, but these questions might help you really refine what you're trying to achieve in each step of your project. And also, Michael and I wanted to offer that if anyone over the next month or two wants to have an appointment with us to go through any of these points, that you're welcome to contact us, and please do reach out, because we're here for you. You're not doing this by yourself. And there's also the ICM people there who are going to be your mentors, PREP4BLUE mentors too, so you can talk to them. So this is the co-authors from the report and the contributors to the report that I've been talking about, and a couple of references which will be sent around in this presentation. And there's my email address if anybody needs it, and my boss. So thank you. I think that's it. Does anyone have questions?
Yes, if someone has any quick question for Liz. Thank you, Lisa. It was really, really, really interesting and so useful. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Yeah, please do reach out if anyone's got questions. Shall I stop sharing so we can see each other's faces again?
Anyone
Really,
has
thank
any?
you. Well, thank you so much, Liz. Thanks, Noemí. Just, I fully agree with Noemí. So, very instructive and motivational presentation. No, really very nice. Just wanted to emphasize that well, we had 33 proposals. All of them were good, and was very difficult to select 6 out of them. No, it was really difficult, and unfortunately, this is the sort of limitations we have right now. But we have taken very good note of all applicants, and we have included you in the list of opportunities. So the idea is that all this process of inform and consult, involve, all these things that Liz has been talking about, is to the extent of our possibilities to include all of you, no? And there we trust there will be possibilities peering, particularly possibilities for gathering, opportunities for workshops, etc. And we take very good note of your interest, of your efforts, and please feel free at any time, as Liz was saying, to contact Liz, or to go, of course, and Mike and people in Norway, or also to contact us. We'll be most happy to try to support. But again, thanks to all applicants for this wonderful work you are doing. Thanks also for being here.
Okay, so now it's turn for Anna. Anna, we look forward to hearing more about C-Synergy. Yeah, and if you want to introduce yourself, please.
Hi, sorry about not being here yesterday. My name is Anna. I'm the Research and Activities Officer for C-Synergy, and I'm leading our oyster project. I'm just going to share my screen here if that's okay.
Yeah, that's perfect. Just allow me, Anna, very quickly. Yesterday we had a short another meeting where we only had the 6 winning proposals. So this is an explanation for clarity. This is one of the things Liz was emphasizing, clarity. No? So we thought this first meeting we had yesterday will be only for the 6 winning proposals, because what in a way was for them to get to know each other also, and this was impossible with the 33 proposals, and also was for explaining the bureaucratic procedures of the so but Anna couldn't be here yesterday, so we take the opportunity, and it's also an illustration for all of you. So that's
thank you very much. Just give me one sec, because I had to change a laptop there. So I haven't got the presentation open on this one. Sorry.
Now you feel the pressure of all eyes on you.
Yes.
Just take it easy.
No worries.
And if it doesn't work, it's not important. But there will be other opportunities. Now it's coming. It's coming.
Oh, one sec. Can you see that?
You are. Yeah, wonderful. Thanks.
Brilliant. So as I said, I'm leading the C-Synergy Oyster Project, which is based here in the Portmagee Channel in Southwest Kerry. And as its name suggests, it's primarily about our native European oyster, which has declined by 95% in Irish waters. So our little relic population we have here in the Portmagee Channel is very important. And also many of the oysters here are of substantially large size, so over 15 centimeters. So it's also interesting from that point of view. In addition to the oysters, we're also looking at some of the amazing biodiversity we have in the channel. So I've just got a couple of photos. We've got some nudibranchs, shorebirds, sharks, sea anemones, fish, sea squirts, pile of stuff. We've got over 260 species recorded in the channel so far. And part of that data comes from our citizen science. So this summer we are doing a number of workshops. So these workshops are on the shore, snorkel workshops and classroom-based workshops, which aim to improve the knowledge of the community of their local marine environment and their connection to it, and just generally keep them informed with the research we're doing. So we're not doing something in the background and nobody knows what's happening. And the follow-on from this is that it will provide them with the confidence and the knowledge to contribute to citizen science. So we have a project up on iNaturalist, which means people can record their observations independently and post workshops. So it's not just, hi, we're doing this really cool thing, bye, never see you again, but there's a follow-on, just that long-term connection. In terms of PREP4BLUE, we are using this to expand our citizen science network by providing site-specific training to organise dives with our local dive club in Friskeena, so reaching out to another group of people, public showcase to present our findings from our research to the wider community in a very sort of visual, interactive way rather than a boring statistical way, and then follow on from that, collaborate with the members of the community and other stakeholders to decide how we're going to progress the project going forward in terms of future monitoring and restoration work. So yeah, hope you caught some of that, but that's basically us in a nutshell. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I don't know if we have any comment or question, or if anyone...
Fire away.
In general, I mean, no.
right.
Okay, if not, we will end here and invite you to the next webinar on 25th of July. Same time, same place. And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.